You are tuned into Mostly Humans. The opinions and views shared by the hosts of this podcast are uniquely their own and do not reflect the view or opinions of the companies they work for. P.S. Don't sue or fire us. Thanks so much. Now let's get into the episode.
22 miles an hour is like driving through a school zone. Like, it's too fast for a school zone. He couldn't run through a school zone, which I think is crazy. Welcome back to Mostly Humans. I'm your host, Justin Wright. We have a really helpful one for you today, but before we do that, Matt, how are you doing this week?
I'm not doing great, and I want to find out what it's like to be happy from you. I am a suffering Giants fan. You know, I was bullish on where things could go this year. I really thought things might be okay. And I thought, you know what? I got fantasy football to back me up in case the Giants are bad. Won the championship last year. No big deal. It's actually not a big deal. It took me like 15 seasons to finally win my first one. Started off 5-0 in one league. I was like, okay. Now, I was never actually confident in that team, and I was right not to be because I've now lost for 5 straight weeks.
Ooh, that's tough.
In my other league, I'm second to last. And you're a Patriots fan. And, you know, you got, I don't know, 20 years of the most improbable sports run in a league that is designed to make you bad when you're good ever in world history.
Mm-hmm.
You guys take a 2.5 year, not even like 2.2 year detour. And now all of a sudden you have arguably the brightest future quarterback in the NFL who is already like a top 6 quarterback, and you're 9-2, and your backup running back just looks like Marshall Faulk meets LaDainian Tomlinson. So what's it like to enjoy football?
If it makes you feel better, before we get into that, my fantasy team this year also sucks. But it is nice. I mean, I am a Patriots fan where I didn't want to get greedy. I was like, listen, we had our dynasty. We're going to go through some rebuilding years. It's okay. We deserve it. Like, it's, you know, some people were like, oh, the Patriots, they stink now. This sucks. It's like, no. We just lived through the most improbable period of all time. But it is nice. Travion, our backup running back, is unbelievable. I mean, it's like he is not the backup anymore. I'm almost positive, even when Ramondre gets back, but he has been stellar. He hit 22 miles an hour running on one of the plays like 2 weeks ago.
With pads on and with like carrying 235 pounds of just chiseled muscle.
Yes. Yep. Insane.
So for those who are trying to extrapolate, what does 22 miles an hour mean? Most treadmills tap out at 13, and most of us have not maxed out a treadmill before. So that should give you some context.
Yeah, 22 miles an hour is like driving through a school zone. Like, it's too fast for a school zone. He couldn't run through a school zone, which I think is crazy.
I won't hijack this more with football, but I'm happy for you that you're happy. You're one of the few Patriots people that, like, I can't be bothered by you in any way. There's a lot of Patriots fans out there that have dunked on people for so many years that, you know, I'm like, you know what, you need some humble pie. But with you, bud, like, I'm actually happy for you. So you're maybe I'm getting soft in my old age. I'm not sure.
Well, thank you. I do feel bad. I was pulling for the Giants to have their run. They were looking great. They had, you know, Scatabo, Dart. Jameis Winston was the backup quarterback, just hyping people up on social media. It was beautiful. It was really beautiful, and I wish it lasted longer. I do.
Well, we're going to do a quick hitter for everybody today because we've been getting this question in dribs and drabs from people. And that is like, how do you break into an AI company? And I want to set the stage and say, how do you break into an AI company if you have been doing knowledge work? I want to look at it through that lens. Is that all right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So what that means is like you kind of work at a desk most of the time. So that could be like banking, it could be analyst relations, it could be PR, it could be marketing, but now you want to work for an AI native company. What is some helpful advice that you have for people that can help them stand out when they're trying to get considered by an AI native company to work there?
Yeah. So biggest thing is learn the terminology, which I think we've tried to do a good job on this podcast in recent episodes of kind of telling you what certain things mean, like what is RAG, how do LLMs work, like what is actually happening in the background. And depending on the position that you're interviewing for, I think most of you probably aren't going to be trying to become an ML engineer at like one of these companies. And if you are, then you probably don't need to listen to this podcast anyways.
Yeah,
but Yeah, right. But, understanding conceptually what's happening and being able to speak to it in plain language, I think is really important because you will be tested to some degree in the interview process of just like, do you understand how this stuff works? And at least in my experience, because I've interviewed for people for my team at my job, which is even a little bit more technical, and the expectation is not that you have a deep, deep understanding of like how machine learning works, how these algorithms work, what's actually going on. It's more like, do you get what's going on? And then we can get into this other point a little bit more because I think it's worth unpacking. But my other piece of advice would be build a side project, like actually try to create something with these tools, whether it's, using MCP to just generate something interesting, whether you want to vibe code something a little bit. Honestly, the two most impressive interviews that I've conducted were two people vibe coded like a whole UI and tried to rebuild what they thought our product was. And it was super impressive. And those were two of the most memorable interviews. And both of those people now work for us. So I'd say a side project, which we can dig a little deeper into, but those would be my two things. Understand the lingo and actually spend some time building a side project for yourself.
I love that. So what do we mean by terminology, right? We talked about a lot of stuff. Like you need to know that MCP basically is this thing in the world. It's like a standardization way that companies make their APIs ready to be used easily by AI for agentic use cases. APIs are just the way that machines talk to each other and send information. That's how like you can pull information out of your CRM and put it into Tableau for a report. There's an API connection. Anytime you guys do those OAuth things, which means like when you click through Gmail and you don't read any of the details and it says you can read your whole inbox and all this stuff, it's integrating via API. That's a really important one for you to know. You all need to understand that agents are things that can actually read, write, and do things outside of being like a chatbot, right? You should know who the players are, the big players, the big companies that create the large language models. So Mistral is one we don't talk about a lot, but they're a player. DeepSeek, one we don't talk about a lot, is a player. Obviously, the big ones is Google, and they have Gemini, and then you have Anthropic, which has Claude, and you have OpenAI, which has ChatGPT. You also like don't want to call OpenAI ChatGPT. That's not the name of their company. Like these little things will show whether or not like you're plugged in and care about this stuff. And that you don't have to know how they work at a deep level or understand them, but you need to know generally what they do, right? Just like generally what a CRM does at a company before you work there. You need to know, if you didn't know what CRM stood for or what it did and you went into the interview, even though you don't know about that company's and how they use theirs, you would seem silly. AI native companies were full of AI enthusiasts. And if it feels like you're not really that into it, you're just here to ride the wave, it's not going to feel to the people who you're interviewing with like you're going to help them figure out how to harness this new technology for whatever problem they're solving in a creative way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we talked about this, I don't know, many episodes ago, but my hypothesis about sales or go to market in particular is that if you're selling an AI product and you don't know high level how AI works, you're just not going to be successful because people will test you in small ways because, we're still on the early adopter part of the curve. I mean, we're getting a little more towards widespread adoption, and there's been a report from Wharton recently that basically said, hey, yeah, a lot of companies are adopting these tools and using these tools. But if you're trying to break in and you don't speak the same language, it will show and it will make you look silly in subtle ways if you aren't interested in this. The other thing that I would say is it can't just be, let me do a deep dive crash course. I'll listen to every one of Matt and Justin's podcasts and go into this interview and then like that's it. Because the space changes so frequently, like literally on a daily basis, the space is changing. You do have to kind of stay up to date on what's happening. I go onto OpenAI's blog and their news section, do the same thing for Anthropic. Even if you're just trying to read what the big players are thinking about in terms of what they're building, why they're building it, I think that becomes really important also.
Yeah. And to piggyback off of that, listening to how these things work is a good place to start But what we always do on this podcast is we challenge y'all to do what we just did or what we experimented with, and we tell you how to get started. There is no limit with these tools to what you can do as far as like a rule book or a playbook, because they're probabilistic. So like the people who built something that you could vibe code with, which I've been really loving Lovable, no pun intended lately. That's my favorite place to vibe code. They have no idea what you are going to vibe code. They just built a vessel that can let you create anything. It's like saying Photoshop had no idea what we were all going to create in Photoshop all those years. It's a vessel to be creative, right? So there is no limit to what we can create. It's just our imagination. So these companies are expecting us to come in and be able to problem solve at their company. And something that I think is critically important that we do as we're trying to break into these companies is show how you would solve the problem of the interview, right? The interview is a problem. You have people who you're trying to win over, you're trying to build trust, you're trying to help them understand in like 60 minutes if they want to work with you. And typically what you would do is you would go in with your words, right? I think you guys need to experiment with these tools, not just listen to them, not just be aware of what they're capable of, so you can use creativity to get through the interview. So if they give you an assignment, make the assignment somehow vibe code something for it, like Justin talked about. Like, for example, last company I interviewed for was actually where you work, right? And they had me do a presentation, and I went above and beyond with the presentation, you know, because I'm an extra kind of human. And I made it really long and lots of research and all this kinds of stuff and put it in a Google slide. Vibe coding wasn't around back then. There is no chance I wouldn't have taken my Google Slides deck now and turned that into something super interactive. And what I would have done is I would have used AI research with the people I knew I'm interviewing with on the panel. And I would have found ways to like show my presentation on the topic they said, vibe coded as a website. But then I know for a fact, just knowing like what these tools can do, I would have like had a drop down for like the 3 different decision makers I was talking to. And whichever one I clicked on, I would take how my experience would be relevant to what they're probably dealing with or what they told me on the last call. And it would filter the page and change it. I'd be like, hey, you, or you, or you. And I would show how based off of what they told me or what I researched on them, why I could be value add and filter the page and change it. And like, you know, that stuff would make people smile and it sticks with them.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
Sorry.
No, the amount of customization that you can do now in an interview setting, the amount of research that you can do on a scale that you couldn't do before. To your point, I have found more use cases for these tools by using them. So when I first started, it was some basic stuff like, okay, cool, complete this sentence, write this thing for me, edit this thing, review this thing. And the more that you use the tools and the more comfortable you get, your brain naturally starts to explore, well, what else can I do? Well, like I can connect my Gmail, so maybe I can do some stuff there. I can connect Google Docs. Like what can I create a document now? Can, you know, all of these things, the more that you use them, the more ideas you start to have. And the most important thing that I would say, and I tell everybody this who I have interviewed and who I talk to about getting into this space, who I haven't interviewed, just friends who are asking me about this, is I say, you are going to be working in an environment that is by nature ambiguous. There is no playbook. There is no rule book to follow. There are going to be situations where you have to make decisions and you don't know what the right decision is. You have just enough information to maybe make a choice. If you're working for a truly AI native company, because you are on the frontier, and that's the reality, there is no like, oh, in this scenario, always do this. There haven't been a bunch of books written about how to work in an AI native company yet, right? There's a lot of that stuff exists for other industries, but this is so new. And so I would also say high level, if you are not comfortable with ambiguity, with just not knowing how to navigate a situation, it's a hard thing to get comfortable with, but I would actually spend some time thinking, one, am I okay with that? And if I'm not super comfortable with it yet, how can I get more comfortable with it? And then in terms of the side projects, this is the most important thing that I think comes from that. I spoke with somebody recently who we were interviewing for our team, who is basically, he mentioned that he had built a side project for his wife's business or whatever. And what I found really interesting about that is going through that process, and he kind of told me what he had built and what he was using, but going through that process actually got him to think in a way where he understood our tech stack without actually knowing much about our company. Because when you start to understand how these AI tools are built and how you can connect to other systems, you actually start to think in a way that allows you to get up to speed quickly in some of these AI native companies. And he actually gave one of the best understandings of or descriptions of how to solve a problem that I had presented to him in the interview, because he had gone through this process of kind of building this side project and getting familiar with how all these tools work. And to Matt's point, I think the only way to get that level of understanding is to roll up your sleeves and actually use this stuff on your own.
So true. You could watch a million YouTube videos on like how to change the oil in your car or whatever. You're never going to get good at it until you actually try to go do that and make some mistakes and learn from your mistakes. And then you're really capable at changing oil in cars, and you can tell someone else how to do it. Like, you have to go from the philosophical or the blackboard, whiteboard training into actual tangible. As you interview with people, these days interviews are exhaustive. You talk to like ICs, you talk to managers, you talk to their manager's peer. It takes a lot of time to get into a company. You need to write down what friction and problems that you're observing from people. And I used to say, build a custom GPT for that and come back to them and be like, hey, I observed this, whether I get this job or not. I'm going to leave you with this published GPT. I think it would really help you guys when you're doing like competitive research on pricing, for example. I now think you should vibe code a solution to a problem. Any problem. So let's say you heard from people, maybe you're interviewing for a sales role and you talk to some of the salespeople, like they let you interview with a team lead or someone who's a senior. And you're like, hey, how do you guys present pricing? And they'll probably do something very just off the cuff and be like, yeah, we don't really have a good way for that. Like kind of like Google Doc it, whatever. Oh, well, do you guys have like a pricing calculator? And they might be like, there's sort of some guidelines, but it's kind of loose. We're working on it. Stuff like that happens in interviews constantly. Or do you guys have like a really good dashboard to monitor for churn and a customer success standpoint and what the game plan is? We kind of do a little bit here into Tango and stuff, but it's a lot in Google Drive. We're working on it. Cool. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're interviewing, but take what you found or you heard. And even if you can't figure out how to set it up to a system, you don't need to set it up to their CRM. You don't need to set it up to their customer success platform, but build maybe something in like a Lovable, a Replit, a Cursor, a Base 44 that is ready to be connected with their API and show how this could be a great pricing calculator. And it goes from pricing calculator to generating a cool like web page that has your quote, or it builds a dashboard that shows these are the at-risk customers. And then you have a spot for the game plan of what playbook you're going to run to save the customer, and send that to them and be like, hey, I got you guys started with this. I think this could be really interesting. I heard this. And this is the kind of AI forward approach that I have towards solving problems. And I think that's the key area, right? If you want to work for an AI native company, we're all expected to punch well above our weight class by using AI tools to move us forward, whether that's other AI tools or our own, because it's a probabilistic world where creativity is how we will win or lose. You have to show that you are willing to use these tools to be X of yourself. And just coming in and interviewing about yourself and your chops and how you're a good people person and you have these track records and these KPIs, all that kind of stuff, I don't think it's going to help you stand out. You might still get a job, but I think we all want to stand out. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, I agree. I think all of those traits that you need working for a traditional company in tech are still true. And those will come through in ways, but where in previous interviews you might emphasize those aspects, I think what you want to emphasize is problem solving. To Matt's point, is the best way to stand out and actually get considered by an AI native company is show how you solve problems with the tools. And some people are afraid. They're like, oh, are they going to know that I use ChatGPT or Lovable to do this? The expectation is that you are using ChatGPT and Lovable, right? The expectation is that you're using these tools. So don't hide it. Actually showcase, hey, I used ChatGPT and MCP to build this thing and actually create this doc, and I think this could be useful. Or I went on Lovable and decided to build this website that could serve as that thing that you were talking about that you needed. The expectation is that you're using the tools. So not only should you not hide the fact that you're using them, you should actually emphasize the fact that you're using them and be comfortable as part of your daily workflow. I use AI tools probably 98% of my work days on a day-to-day basis now because I could not do my job without it. And the expectation is that I'm using them. It's actually detrimental if you're interviewing for an AI native company and you're trying to limit the amount that you're using these tools. So that's the last thing I would say is highlight the fact that you are using these tools excessively, that you are actually trying to build things with them. And I think that is how you stand out. And that's kind of where I would end in terms of my last piece of advice. Do you have anything else for the people at home, Matt?
I'm really happy that you said that. It's actually a really important part I wouldn't have thought to say on this call. But we are still in this weird place as a society where we're like dancing around, did we use AI or didn't we? So even if they did, a lot of people probably wouldn't talk about it. And you're so right to highlight, you should say that you did. It's like if I told my team, hey, here's a nail gun, we got to go build a house. And I come back to the job site and everybody's using a hammer. I'd be like, what are you doing? I gave you a way better tool. We got to move. Time is money. So AI company wants to not only see what you did as far as the outcome with AI to show that you're a problem solver, but they want to know that you used AI and how fast you did it and how much time it saved you, because they want you to do that once they hire you at their company to be kind of superhuman. So I think we can wrap it up here. This is the advice. Whatever the assignment is for the interview, the job research you have to do, whatever it is, use AI to do something creative. And if you're struggling, ask ChatGPT, be like, here's the assignment, here are the people, here's the LinkedIn profile, come up with something crazy creative I could do with AI to stand out, and it will give you a playbook. Justin, thank you for this advice. I would love to hear from our listeners in the comments that somebody got a job because of this. If you did, please reach out to us. And outside of that, please like and please subscribe. The podcast is steadily growing, but we are still about 2.9 million views away from hitting a milestone of being taken seriously by YouTube.
We're chugging along. We're getting there. Yeah, please like and subscribe. I would love for somebody to get a job because of this podcast. And if you're going to interview for a job, reach out to us. If we can be helpful, if we can provide some tools that you can use, we're always happy to do that. That's why we do this. We want to demystify this and help you all out as listeners. So thanks as always for tuning in. Until next time, we'll see you then.
See you, everybody.